Hi everyone and welcome to the video tutorial for Karma, a role-playing game about consequences. So what this video series aims to do is not to replace the rulebook, but rather to supplement it and to help get you going and up and running when you play your game of Karma. It's also a great video series to forward on to people who may be playing in a game that you're facilitating so they can get an idea of the rules and how they will come together before they meet you at the table. That being said, let's get started straight away and have a look at what you actually need to play. So the first thing that you're going to need to play a game of Karma is a set of character sheets, and you're going to need one of these for every single player around the table, and obviously you'll also need a copy of the rulebook. In addition to that, you'll need some tokens, which we use to track the Karma pool in our game, and we'll need some dice. At most you'll need 5 of each color, so you need 5 dice in one color. So here we have in the video 5 white dice, and over here we have 5 black dice, and we'll talk a little bit later about what these dice actually mean. Just regular 6-sided dice. So all you need, the character sheets, some tokens, some dice, and some pencils and erasers to write with. So once you've gathered all the materials that you need, let's have a look at the character sheet and do some initial setup before we actually get started playing the game. On each character sheet, you'll find a chart like this one. This is your Karma pool. And your Karma represents the good and bad Karma that your character builds up over the course of a game. You can have lots of good Karma or lots of bad Karma. And what your good Karma and bad Karma will do is it'll affect the outcome for your character at the end of the game. So when we're setting up, the first thing we do is we take our little token and we place it on the +3 -2 space on our Karma track, which is over there. Over the course of the game, that token will be moving left and right to represent the shifts in our character's Karma. Now that everyone has their character sheets and Karma pool set up and ready, let's take a look at the dice and discuss a little bit how they work in Karma. So in a game of Karma, you need 10 dice, 5 in one color and 5 in another color. And in this video, we have 5 black dice with red pips and 5 white dice with black pips. These are 2 different types of dice that we call the negative dice and the positive dice. And the way that any dice test is resolved and calculated in Karma is you'll have a number of positive dice and a number of negative dice. Let's get the rest of these out the way. And you'll take these and roll them together, and you'll add up the total value of the white positive dice and subtract the value of the black negative dice, and that is your total amount. So in this example, we had 5 minus 5, so we have 0. Any zeros we re-roll automatically, so let's roll this again and see what we get. So here we have 6 minus 7, which will give us a total of -1 for this roll. Most rolls, however, only use 2 dice. So now that we understand how the dice work and everyone's got their character sheet, the first thing that we need to do as a group is decide on a module. Now there's a series of modules in the book, and essentially what a module is a story set. So there are a variety, as I mentioned. You'll have modules that'll be sort of targeted towards playing science fiction stories, or stories about being shipwrecked on an island, or trapped inside a supermarket. There are loads of different modules in the book. So you as a group will just get together and decide which one you feel like playing today. But for the purposes of this tutorial series, we'll be using the first module in the book, which is called Black Friday. So Black Friday is a module about being trapped inside a supermarket or a shopping center during a terrible crisis. And what that crisis is, we don't know yet. We'll discover that together as players. But once we've decided on our module, the first thing that we need to do is to choose a character set. Now, there's a number of different character sets in each module. Some modules have 2 or 3, others only have 1. And as a group, we'll then again decide which character set we want to play. So what is a character set? Essentially, a character set is a collection of different roles that we can choose from when we're preparing to play our game. So for example, if we take Black Friday, there are 2 different character sets in Black Friday. We can either play as a family, so a family unit that's been trapped inside the mall, or we can play as the night staff. So your butcher and your baker and your security guard and the night manager. And each of those separate character sets will have a number of different roles and relationships that we'll use in the next phase when we actually build our characters and define the relationships between them. So all we have to do now is look at the character sets and decide on which one appeals to us. So once we've decided on our module and character set, it's time for us each to create our own characters. And the first step to do that is to pick a role. Now, each character set has got a list of different roles that you can choose from, and you can choose any role that you want. The only restriction is that each role can only be selected once. So if we were playing Black Friday, for example, one person could select the janitor, the other could select the security guard, and someone else could choose to play the butcher, for example. So you can choose any role that you want from the book, and once that's done, spend some time thinking about your character and thinking about who they are, what kind of person are they, what are they into, what makes them tick, and you're going to write that information in the description box on the top right hand corner of your character sheet. Just a few keywords describing your character, who they are, how old they are, and what they're all about. Once that's done, you need to go into the book and you need to choose a vice and a virtue for your character. Now you can choose these from the list based on the character description that you've come up with, or alternatively, if you're struggling to come up with a character, you can simply roll on the chart in the book to randomly select a vice and a virtue. Okay, this is very exciting. We've all decided on which characters we're going to be playing, and we've spoken a little bit about the kinds of people that they are. The next phase is to develop the relationships between our characters and all the other characters around the table. And we'll do this in a collaborative style. You'll have a discussion with the person next to you, and you'll pick relationship descriptors from the list in the book. So if we take the list in Black Friday, for example, your characters could either be friendly towards one another, hateful, jealous, and what you'll do is you'll write the other character's name in the relationship section on your character sheet, and you'll write the description keyword, and then you'll write a little bit about why your character feels that way about them or how they feel about them. So you could say, for example, that I'm playing the night manager, and over here to my right, another player is playing the assistant manager, and we could say that my character has a lustful relationship to them, and we'll write, oh, he's had a crush on her since they were in high school together, or whatever the case may be. So you will go around the table, and collaborating will develop relationships between one another. Now, you can choose to be entirely open with the people that you're developing relationships with, but sometimes it's also pretty exciting to keep some things back, hide a few secrets about the way that your character feels about the other characters, so that we can have some surprises around the table and unexpected character twists that come out at pivotal narrative moments. Right, so we've all chosen our characters and built them up, and we've developed relationships between one another. The next thing and the final phase we need to do before we actually start playing the game and framing scenes is to do what's called the world building phase. Now in each module you'll find 2 world building questionnaires. There's the first questionnaire, which is a group questionnaire, and then a second questionnaire, which is an individual questionnaire. So what we'll do is we'll grab an index card or a sheet of paper and we'll put it in the middle of the table, and we'll go around the table taking turns answering one question from the group questionnaire at a time. And the question may be, well, what is the sort of terrible element that's keeping us inside the supermarket? And it may be my turn to answer. So I would say something like, oh, well, there was a zombie outbreak that's sort of come over the town. Or it could be a poisonous deadly mist or a terrible hurricane. Whatever that may be, that's my choice. It's my turn to answer the question. We then pass over to the next person and they'll answer the next question. And we'll go around the table like that until all the questions have been answered from the group questionnaire. If there are any questions that are made irrelevant by previous answers, feel free to skip over those and just move on to the next one. So once we've done that, we'll have a very good idea of the crisis that our group is facing and the world that they're inhabiting. And once that's done, it's time to move on to the second questionnaire, which is one that all the players answer individually. And it'll be asking you questions about how your character feels about the situation that they're trapped in and the world that they're inhabiting. And just some personal questions that give you some insight into how your character feels about what's actually going on inside the story. So once we've done the world building phase, it's time to start playing. And we start that by narrating our opening scenes. So in your opening scene, you're just describing something that happens to your character. So you'll just be talking about a scene where the character is present and what they're doing, just to give a little bit of a taste or an insight into what your character is all about. We all go around the table, and that is uninterrupted. So when someone's delivering their opening scene, they just talk and talk until they're finished. But normally an opening scene shouldn't last longer than a minute or 2. Once we've done going around the table and narrating our opening scenes, it's time to start framing scenes properly. And this is really where the meat of the game lies. In a full game of Karma, each player will get to narrate 5 full scenes. And the way that this works is you start and you describe sort of where the scene is taking place and who's present and what's actually happening in the scene. And when you're the active player, it's your scene. You have complete agency of what happens in the story. The only thing that you don't have agency over are the actions and words of the other players. If another player's character is in the scene, they will act in character and interact with you and the other characters in that way. If there are any NPCs in the scene, then you can either play them yourself or rope in one of the other players whose character isn't present in the scene to play that NPC. And what will happen is this scene will go. You'll generally set it for a few seconds and then you'll just start running with it. And other characters will interact with you. And this is how the story progresses and pushes forward. Now, in each of these 5 regular scenes can only come to an end once a complication has been resolved. So complications are really the meat and potatoes in terms of the mechanics in Karma. If I'm the active player and I'm busy narrating and framing a scene and directing a scene, one of the other players around the table will get to introduce what's called a complication into my scene. And complications are where they can add little narrative plot twists into the story. So, for example, I could be running down the hallway to get away from some zombies, and another player could interrupt the scene and say, right, I'm going to introduce a complication. And the complication is that there's a puddle of water and you slip in the water and sprain your ankle, for example. That could be an example of a complication. So now as the active player, I have to roll dice to figure out if that complication happens, if the bad thing happens to me, or if I manage to somehow narrowly avoid it. And the way that that's resolved is with a complication roll. So let's have a look at the dice and see how a complication roll actually works. So once a player has introduced a complication into our scene, it's time for us to roll to see if it resolves positively or negatively for our character. So all complication rolls start with 2 positive dice in the dice pool. This is a given, and you can always choose to roll with just these 2 positive dice. What you're looking for is a result of 7 or more. Any result of 7 or higher means that the negative complication doesn't occur for your character. Your character narrowly escapes. So what you could do, theoretically, is when you have a complication added, you just take your 2 dice and roll them and hope for the best. But there's about a 50-50 chance of things going one way or the other. Where Karma really comes into its own is that you can sway the odds of this dice pool in your favor by affecting your Karma pool. So let's have a look at how that works. Before we roll our complication roll, we get the choice to either add a negative dice to our complication pool, so we could add a negative dice, or we could choose to add another positive dice. So we could add another positive dice if we really don't want the bad thing to happen to us. And we could add a negative dice if we think narratively it would be really exciting and interesting if the bad complication happened to us. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we do is we look at our chart over here and we move our token either 1 space to the left or to the right. So if we want to add a negative dice to our complication pool, we move our token 1 space to the left and we add that negative dice. If we wanted to add a positive dice to the complication pool, we would move that token 1 space to the right, and we would add a positive dice. Then we would roll our dice, total up the value, and figure out if the complication happens or not. And as you can see here, I've rolled a 17, so the complication definitely doesn't happen. My character escapes with ease. And that's how complication rolls work. So each scene will only have 1 complication roll. And once that complication roll has been resolved, that active player can then end the scene at any time by just saying scene or cut or whatever feels natural to you. Most scenes will last between 3 or 4 minutes, but some can get a little bit longer than that. And that's the flow of the game. So we'll go around, each player will take turns directing a scene until we've all directed 5, bearing in mind that the non-active players can introduce a complication into the scene, and each scene can only have 1 complication, and it can only end once the complication has been resolved. The only rule about adding complications to scenes is that you can't add a complication to 2 scenes in a row. So once we've gone around and everyone has had their turn to frame and direct 5 scenes, it's time for us to finally round up the game and narrate our finales, and that's where our Karma pool really comes into its own. So let's talk a little bit about the Karma pool and how these finales actually work. So now that we've narrated our 5 main scenes, it's time for us all to narrate our finales. And before we do that, we need to make a Karma roll or a finale roll. And this will determine whether the outcome of our story for our character is positive or negative. So how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is we need to build up a dice pool, and we do that by looking at the position of our token on the chart here. And you can see here that my token was on the 2+, 3- position, which means that I build up a pool with 2 positive dice and 3 negative dice. What I then do is I'll roll this dice pool. So let's have a look here. I'm going to get this out the way. So I'll roll this dice pool and I'll total up the amount. Oopsie daisy, one of my dice escaped. And we'll total up the amount and see what we end up with. So here we have 9, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So my total result here is -1 because these dice cancel each other out. And I'm left with a result of -1. What does that mean? Any negative result for your character means that the outcome for your character is bad, and that has to reflect in the way that you narrate your finale. If you have a positive result for your character, say for example my total at the end was a +5, then I could narrate the finale in any way that I see fit. The only restriction is that if the roll is negative, then I have to have a bad outcome. So based on the outcome of this Karma roll right at the end of the game, will determine how you narrate your finale. And once everyone's narrated their finales, we can cross it off on the list and we're done. That's a game of karma, and you can just sit around and talk with your friends about what an amazing time you've had telling an interesting and exciting story. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy playing Karma, and please share in the comments below about the stories and games that you have and enjoy telling with one another playing our game. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.